They say the first drop of virgin blood can resurrect the dead. The second can grant immortality. But no one speaks of what happens when a father tastes his daughter's life between his fangs, because some truths are too monstrous even for monsters to bear. That night, beneath a shattered moon, the most powerful vampire king in history would learn that power means nothing when you're holding the one thing you thought you'd lost forever. And she would learn that sometimes the monster hunting you is the only one who can save you. The girl had been running for 17 years, though she didn't know it yet. Illyria's earliest memory was of her mother's face in moonlight, whispering words she couldn't understand, pressing a silver pendant into her small palm before the scent of smoke swallowed everything. After that, there were only fragments. Cold stone floors, distant screams, the sensation being carried through darkness by arms that trembled. Then silence. Then Martha's cottage, deep in the thornwood, where questions were answered with gentle deflection, and the doors were always locked before sunset. "Stay inside," Martha would say, her weathered hands checking each window latch twice, 3 times. The forest isn't safe after dark. But safety was a myth Illyria had stopped believing in the night. She turned 16 and woke to find her sheets soaked in blood that glowed faintly silver under moonlight. Martha had burned them immediately, her face pale as ash, and they'd packed their meager belongings before dawn. They'd been moving ever since, small villages, abandoned cabins, places where no one asked questions and strangers were invisible. Tonight, they were hiding in the ruins of a monastery 3 days north of anywhere that had a name. Illyria sat on the stone floor, her back against a crumbling wall, watching dust motes dance in the shaft of moonlight that cut through the collapsed roof. Her fingers traced the pendant at her throat, the only thing she had from before. It was silver, carved with symbols she'd never been able to decipher, warm against her skin even in the coldest nights. "Tell me again," she said softly, "why they want me." Martha didn't look up from the herbs she was grinding. Her hands had grown shakier with each passing month, her breathing more labored. "You know why?" "No, I know what you've told me, that my blood is different, that it's valuable." The word tasted bitter. "But you've never told me why. What makes it different? What am I?" The grinding stopped. In the silence that followed, Illyria could hear the wind moving to the broken walls, carrying with it the scent of rain and something else, something that made the hair on her arms stand up. "Your blood is pure," Martha said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Untouched by death, unspoiled by darkness. To them, it's power. Raw, absolute power. A single drop could heal wounds that should be mortal. A vial could break ancient curses. And if someone were to drink deeply," she closed her eyes, "they would become something beyond even legend. Illyria's throat tightened. "The vampires." Martha's silence was answer enough. Illyria had seen one once, 3 years ago, when they were staying in a border town called Ashimor. She'd been foolish, sneaking out to the night market despite Martha's warnings, drawn by the sound of music and laughter. Things that felt like memories of a life she'd never lived. She'd been admiring ribbons in a merchant's stall when she felt it. A presence that made her skin crawl, made every instinct scream run. She'd turned and met eyes that were beautiful and terrible, crimson irises that held galaxies of hunger. The vampire had been young-looking, aristocratic, his clothes fine enough to mark him as nobility. He'd stopped mid-stride, his nostrils flaring, his expression shifting from casual interest to something like religious ecstasy. "You," he breathed, and the word carried such longing it felt obscene. Illyria had run. She'd never run so fast in her life, crashing through crowds, her heart threatening to shatter her ribs. Behind her, she'd heard his pursuit, graceful, unhurried, inevitable. He'd been playing with her, she realized later, letting her think she could escape. She would have died that night if Martha hadn't found her first, pressed a sachet of vervain and blessed salt into her hand, and whispered words in a language that made the air itself recoil. The vampire had stopped at the edge of the alley, his beautiful face contorted with rage and something like fear, before melting back into shadow. They'd left Ashimor before sunrise. "How many are looking for me?" Illyria asked now, pulling herself back to the present. "All of them," Martha said simply. Every vampire in the 5 kingdoms knows of the prophecy. A child born under the blood moon, marked by silver light, whose veins carry the essence of the first dawn. They've been searching for 17 years. 17 years. Illyria's entire life. And my parents? The question hurt to ask. Were they like me? Martha's hands stilled completely. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. Your mother loved you more than life itself. That's all you need to know. It wasn't all Illyria needed to know, but she recognized the wall when she hit it. Martha had secrets nested inside secrets. Truths she guarded more fiercely than she guarded Illyria's life. Whatever had happened 17 years ago, whatever had separated Illyria from her family, Martha carried the weight of it like penance. The wind shifted. Martha's head snapped up, her body going rigid. "No," she whispered. "No, not yet. We had more time." "What is it?" But even as Illyria asked, she felt it too. That same crawling sensation from Ashimor, but multiplied, magnified, as if the air itself was being poisoned by proximity to something vast and ancient. "Run," Martha said, grabbing Illyria's arm with surprising strength. "There's a passage in the eastern wall, behind the old altar. It leads to the catacombs. Go deep as you can, and don't stop until—" The door exploded inward, not opened, not broken, exploded, reduced to splinters and iron dust in a single instant, as if a hurricane had been compressed into a fist and released. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, and Illyria screamed, throwing her arms up to shield her face from the debris. When she lowered them, she saw death walk through the doorway. They were beautiful, all of them. 5 vampires, dressed in clothes that spoke of wealth and power, their movements liquid grace, their faces perfect as porcelain masks. But their eyes, God, their eyes, crimson and hungry, fixed on Illyria with an intensity that felt like being flayed alive. Finally, the one in front breathed. He was tall, dark-haired, wearing midnight blue velvet that probably cost more than the monastery had when it was standing. "Do you know how long we've been hunting you, little morsel? How many lives we've ended, how many villages we've burned, just to catch your scent?" Martha stepped between them, her frail body suddenly seeming larger, fiercer. She was holding something, a vial, glowing faintly with trapped moonlight. "You will not touch her." The vampire laughed, and the sound was beautiful and wrong. "Old woman, do you think your holy water frightens us? We are the Nightborn Court. We have walked this earth for 1,000 years. Your magic is smoke and shadow compared to our." Martha threw the vial. It shattered the vampire's feet, and the light that erupted was blinding, pure, searing white, accompanied by a sound like choir voices screaming. The vampires shrieked, stumbling back, their skin blistering where the light touched. 2 of them fell completely, writhing on the stone floor, smoke rising from their flesh. "Run!" Martha roared and Illyria ran. She didn't think, didn't look back, just bolted for the eastern wall like Martha had said. Behind her, she heard sounds that would haunt her nightmares. Martha chanting in that ancient language, the vampires screaming in rage, the wet sound of something tearing. She wanted to turn back, wanted to help, but Martha had given her this chance, and she couldn't waste it. The altar was there, crumbling and covered in moss. Behind it, barely visible, was a crack in the wall just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Illyria threw herself into it, scraping her shoulders on rough stone, the darkness swallowing her whole. The passage was narrow, suffocating, angling downward into earth that smelled of decay and forgotten time. Illyria crawled, then stumbled, then ran when the passage widened, her hands outstretched in absolute darkness, her breathing ragged with terror and grief. Martha was dead. She knew it with sudden, terrible certainty. The woman who had raised her, protected her, loved her, gone, buying Illyria's life with her own. She ran until her legs gave out, collapsed against damp stone, and wept. How long she lay there, she didn't know. Minutes or hours. Time felt meaningless in the absolute dark. Eventually, her tears dried, her breathing steadied. She had to keep moving, had to honor Martha's sacrifice by surviving. She pushed herself up, reached out to feel the wall, and froze. There was light ahead, faint, flickering, like candlelight filtering through a distant doorway. Hope surged in her chest. Maybe the passage led somewhere, to another village, another chance at survival. She moved toward the light. Faster now, following the passage as it curved and descended further. The light grew stronger, and with it came sound, footsteps, echoing softly on stone. Multiple footsteps. Illyria's hope curdled into ice. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself small, invisible, but it was too late. The footsteps were getting closer, and now she could see shadows moving in the light. Tall, graceful shadows that move with predatory fluidity. "I can smell you," a voice called out, male, resonant, carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Your fear, your blood, that exquisite, impossible scent that's driven my people to madness." Illyria's hand went to the pendant at her throat, gripping it so hard the carved edges cut into her palm. She had nowhere to run. The passage behind her led back to the Nightborn court. The passage ahead. The figure stepped into view. He was taller than the others had been, broader in the shoulders, dressed in black that seemed to devour light. His hair was dark as midnight, pulled back to reveal a face that was devastating. Sharp cheekbones, a mouth that could have been carved by a master sculptor, a jaw that spoke of both cruelty and control. But it was his eyes that pinned her in place. They weren't crimson like the others. They were violet, deep as twilight, ancient as empires, and they held something she hadn't expected to see in a vampire's gaze. Intelligence. Not just hunger, not just predatory focus, but actual thought, calculation, and something else, something that flickered across his perfect features for just an instant when he saw her. Confusion. "You!" he said, and the word was almost wondering. He took a step closer, his movements careful, as if approaching something precious and breakable. "They said you were a myth, a legend to drive fools to their graves." Another step, but here you stand, the child of prophecy, the virgin whose blood can reshape the world. Illyria's back hit the wall. There was nowhere left to go. "Stay back," she managed, her voice barely steady. "You'll what?" He tilted his head, studying her with those impossible eyes. "Fight? Run? Child, I am Victor Thorn, king of the eternal night, lord of the 5 kingdoms, eldest of the firstborn. I have ended empires. What do you think you can do against me?" The truth was nothing. She was human, fragile, already exhausted from running. He was death in a beautiful shell, and they both knew it. But she met his eyes anyway, lifted her chin, and refused to look away. "I can die fighting." Something shifted in his expression. He was very close now, close enough that she could see details no living person should see. The way his skin seemed to drink in shadow, the faint luminescence beneath his pale throat, the absolute stillness of his chest that marked him as something that didn't breathe. Such fire, he murmured. Such defiance, even in the face of inevitability. He reached out slowly, giving her time to flinch away, but she didn't. His hand cupped her face, cool fingers against her fevered skin, and his eyes widened. That confusion again, stronger now, mixed with something like shock. "Your eyes," he breathed. "That shade of... No, it's not possible." "What?" Illyria whispered, hating how her voice shook. Victor's hand dropped away as if she burned him. He took a step back, then another, his expression shifting through emotions too quick to track. Behind him, other vampires emerged from the shadows. His court, she realized, watching with predatory interest. "My lord," one of them ventured, "shall we secure her? Prepare her for the ritual?" Victor didn't answer. He was staring at Illyria's pendant now, his eyes locked on the silver symbol visible at her throat. The color drained from his already pale face. "Where did you get that?" His voice had changed, no longer commanding, but something raw, almost broken. Illyria's hand went to the pendant protectively. "I've always had it. It's the only thing from before." "Before," Victor repeated, and the word seemed to cost him. "Before what?" "Before I was found. Before Martha took me in. I don't remember anything before I was 3 years old," Victor finished, his voice hollow. You don't remember anything before you were 3 years old. How'd he know that? Victor turned abruptly to his court. Leave us. My lord, the others will come. I said leave. The command cracked like a whip, echoing through the stone passage, and the other vampires melted into shadow without another word. When they were alone, Victor turned back to Alara. In the candlelight, she could see his hands were shaking. What year were you born? He asked quietly. I don't know exactly. Martha said I was about 3 when she found me, and that was 14 years ago, so... 17 years ago, Victor said. You were born 17 years ago, during the War of Crimson Thorns, when the 5 kingdoms burned and alliances shattered like glass. Alara's heart was pounding. How do you? Because I lost someone 17 years ago. His voice broke on the words. My daughter. She was taken during a raid on the Western Palace. She was 3 months old. I searched for years, decades by mortal reckoning, but I never found a trace. Eventually, I assumed she was dead, that the enemy clans had killed her to hurt me. No, I'm not. Alara started, but Victor was already moving forward, reaching out again. This time, his hand went to the pendant at her throat, his fingers brushing the silver surface with infinite gentleness. This belonged to her mother, he whispered. My Elena. She had it made when we learned she was pregnant. Etched it with protection sigils in a language older than kingdoms. She placed it around our daughter's neck the night she was born. His eyes lifted to Alara's, and they were swimming with something that looked impossible on a vampire king's face. Tears. She placed it around your neck, Victor finished, his voice breaking completely. And 17 years later, here you stand. The virgin every monster wants to bleed dry. The prophecy made flesh. The girl I've been hunting along with every other predator in my kingdom. Alara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. You're saying I'm... My daughter, Victor said, and the word seemed to shatter something in both of them. God help us both. You're my daughter, and I spent 17 years wanting nothing more than to sink my fangs into your throat and drink until there's nothing left. The silence that followed was absolute. Somewhere above them, the monastery burned. The Nightborn court was waiting. Every vampire in the 5 kingdoms was hunting for the virgin with the pure blood, the girl whose death could reshape the balance of power. And Alara stood in the darkness, facing the father she'd never known, the monster who wanted to save her and destroy her in equal measure. Neither of them moved. Neither of them knew what came next. The first thing Victor did was turn away. It was such a human gesture, that instinctive need to hide vulnerability, that for a moment Alara forgot what he was. Forgot the legends, the fear, the 17 years of running. She saw only a man whose shoulders had collapsed under an impossible weight, whose hands were pressed against a stone wall, as if it was the only thing keeping him standing. You should have stayed hidden, he said, his voice barely audible. You should have stayed lost. Alara's throat was tight. I didn't know I was lost. Ignorance doesn't make you safe. It just makes you easier prey. He turned back, and his face had transformed into something cold, controlled. The mask of a king. Every vampire in the 5 kingdoms is converging on this location as we speak. The Nightborn court above us, the Blood Covenant from the east, the Dusk Legion from the south. By sunrise there will be war. Because of me, because of what you are. His eyes flickered to her throat, and she saw hunger flash across his features before he locked it down. Your blood isn't just pure, it's impossibly so. A damper child should have died in infancy, or been turned by their vampire parents' essence in the womb. But you... He moved closer, circling her like a predator studying prey. You carry my blood, but remain wholly human, mortal, fragile, and that impossibility makes you the most valuable creature in existence. I'm not a creature, Alara said, anger bleeding through her fear. I'm a person. To them, your sustenance and power wrapped in skin. To me... He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, marks of an age she couldn't begin to calculate. I don't know what you are to me. My daughter, my destruction, perhaps both. Then let me go. The words came out desperate. You said it yourself. I should have stayed hidden. So let me hide again. Let me? There is no hiding anymore. Victor's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. The moment I recognized you, I disrupted the concealment spell that woman used to mask your scent. Every vampire within 100 miles can smell you now. They'll hunt you to the edges of the earth and beyond. Martha's spell. Martha, who had died buying Illyra minutes she couldn't even keep. She wasn't just that woman, Illyra said, her voice breaking. Her name was Martha. She raised me, loved me, and she died because she was a fool. Victor's words were ice. She saved a vampire's child and thought she could protect it with parlor tricks and prayers. She should have killed you in your crib. The slap came before Illyra even realized she'd moved. Her palm cracked across Victor's face with all the force of 17 years of grief and fear and fury, and the sound echoed to the stone passage like a gunshot. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Victor's head had snapped to the side with the impact. Slowly, so slowly, he turned back to face her. There was a thin line of blood at the corner of his mouth, where her ring had caught skin. In the candlelight, it looked black. You struck me, he said, his voice absolutely neutral. Illyra's hand was throbbing. She'd probably broken something. But she kept her chin up, kept her eyes on his. You dishonored her memory. I stated fact. You dismissed her sacrifice. A sacrifice born of sentiment and foolishness. She was the only mother I ever knew. The words tore out of Illyra's throat, raw and ragged. So yes, I struck you. And I'd do it again. The silence stretched between them, razor-thin and crackling with tension. Then, impossibly, Victor smiled. It was barely there, just a slight curve at the corner of his mouth, but it transformed his face completely. You have Elena's fire, he said softly. She once broke 3 of my ribs for suggesting her diplomatic work was a waste of time. I healed, of course, but the lesson stuck. The smile faded. She would have been so proud of you. The use of past tense at Illyra, like a physical blow. My mother is dead? Victor's expression shuddered. She died the night you were taken. The raiders came through the western wall during a feast. She fought. His voice caught, the first real crack in his composure. She fought like a demon to protect you. But there were too many, and she was only half vampire. Strong, but not immortal. Not like me. Only half vampire. The words rearranged everything Illyra thought she understood. So I'm a quarter vampire, she said slowly. 3/4 human. That's why I'm an impossibility, yes. You should have died or turned. Instead, you became something unprecedented. Human enough to carry pure blood. Vampire enough to make that blood impossibly potent. Victor reached out, hesitated, then let his hand fall. I should have protected you better. Protected her better. But I was arrogant. I thought my power made us untouchable. There was genuine pain in his voice, layered beneath centuries of control. Illyra saw him clearly for the first time, not as a monster or a king, but as a man who had lost everything and spent nearly 2 decades believing his daughter was dead. Who took me? She asked quietly. The Covenant of Thorns. A rival clan led by a vampire named Malachi. He wanted to weaken me, to use you as leverage, or... Victor's jaw tightened. Or to harvest your blood for himself once you came of age. But something went wrong. His compound burned 3 days after the raid. I searched the ashes myself, found nothing but bones and debris. No trace of you. I thought... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Martha found me in a border village, Illyra said, filling the silence. She said I was alone, crying in the ruins of a burned building. She said I had the pendant and nothing else. Then someone saved you from Malachi, spirited you away before his compound fell. Victor's eyes had gone distant, calculating. The question is who, and why they left you to be found rather than bringing you back to me. Before Illyra could respond, a sound echoed to the passage. Footsteps, distant but approaching fast. Victor's head snapped up, his entire body going rigid. They've found the entrance, he said. We're out of time. Who? Everyone. He grabbed her wrist, his grip gentle but unbreakable. The other clans, the courts, probably a dozen independent hunters who've been tracking your scent for months. This location is about to become a killing field. So what do we do? Victor looked at her for a long moment, something complex moving across his features. I make a choice, the kind that can't be unmade. He pulled her deeper into the passage, moving with inhuman speed, while somehow keeping her on her feet. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber, ancient catacombs lined with alcoves carved into stone, each containing the desiccated remains of long-dead monks. Candles burned in wall sconces, their flames unnaturally still, casting shadows that seemed to breathe. In the center of the chamber stood a circular altar, its surface covered in carved symbols that hurt to look at directly. This was a sanctuary once, Victor said, releasing her wrist. A place where humans and vampires made treaties under the watchful eyes of both their gods. The magic here is old, neutral. It will listen to me one more time. Listen to you do what? He turned to face her fully. Bind you to me, a blood oath that will mark you as my protected kin, under the absolute authority of the eternal throne. Anyone who tries to harm you will be declaring war on me personally. Illyria's stomach dropped. That's not protection. That's ownership. It's survival. Victor's voice was harsh. Without my mark, you're fair game. With it, you become untouchable. They'll still want you, still hunger for what you are, but they won't dare act on it. Not unless they want their entire bloodline erased. And the price? Illyria stepped back. There's always a price. You'll be bound to me, unable to leave my protection, my territory, my sight. Your life will no longer be yours to risk. He moved toward the altar, his movements fluid and purposeful. But you'll be alive. That's more than I can promise if we try any other option. The footsteps were getting closer. Illyria could hear voices now, snarling, arguing, the sounds of predators fighting over territory. I spent 17 years running, she said quietly. Martha died so I could keep running. And now you want me to stop, to surrender my freedom to stay alive. I want you to survive. Victor's eyes met hers, and they were burning with emotion. He wasn't bothering to hide anymore. I want you to live long enough for me to know you, to make up for 17 years of absence. Is that selfish? Yes. Do I care? Not remotely. Illyria looked at the altar, at the symbols that seemed to ride in the candlelight, at Victor, standing there with his hands clenched at his sides, trying so hard not to beg, at the passage behind her, where death was approaching with hungry mouths and empty eyes. Martha's voice whispered in her memory. Sometimes survival means making choices that hurt, but dead martyrs don't get second chances. If I agree, Illyria said slowly, I want your word. You won't use me, won't experiment with my blood, won't trade me to your allies, won't treat me like a weapon or a resource. You have it, and you'll tell me the truth about my mother, about the war, about what I am. No more secrets. Victor hesitated, then nodded. As much truth as I can give without breaking oaths older than your existence. It wasn't a perfect promise, but perfection wasn't an option anymore. All right, Illyria said, and the word felt like stepping off a cliff. All right, do it. Victor's relief was palpable, though he hit it quickly. He gestured to the altar. Stand in the center. Don't move once the ritual begins, no matter what you see or hear. Illyria approached the altar slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. The stone was cold beneath her feet, and the symbols seemed to pulse with a light that had no source. Victor stood opposite her, rolling up his sleeve to expose pale skin threaded with veins of silver blue. This will hurt, he warned. The magic needs to taste your mortality before it can protect it. Everything hurts lately, Illyria muttered, but her hands were shaking. Victor produced a knife from somewhere, obsidian blade, handle wrapped in aged leather. He drew it across his palm without flinching, blood welling up black and viscous in the candlelight. Then he held the knife out to Illyria. Your turn. Same hand, same depth. Illyria took the knife. The handle was warm from Victor's grip. She pressed the blade to her palm, hesitated. The door exploded inward. not the one behind her, but a second entrance she hadn't seen, hidden in shadow. Vampires poured through like a flood, at least a dozen of them, their eyes blazing crimson, their movements a coordinated assault. "Victor!" The shout came from a vampire in the lead. Female, beautiful in that terrible way they all were, dressed in armor that looked forged for midnight. Step away from the girl. She belongs to the Blood Covenant by right of first scent. "Celine!" Victor's voice was absolutely flat. "You're trespassing in neutral ground. Neutral ground hasn't existed since you broke the Crimson Accords." Celine's smile was all teeth. "The old laws are dead, Victor. And so is your claim to that girl's blood." More vampires were arriving now, from different entrances Alara hadn't noticed. The catacombs were a maze, and they'd all found their way in. She recognized some of the faces from the monastery. The Nightborn Court, still hunting despite Victor's presence. "Last chance," Celine said, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "Give us the girl, or we take her. And you." Victor looked at Alara. In his eyes, she saw a question, a plea, a promise. She didn't think, didn't let herself hesitate. She drew the blade across her palm in one swift motion, gasping at the sharp, bright pain. Blood welled up, silver bright in the candlelight, and the scent that filled the air made every vampire in the room go absolutely still. Victor moved. He grabbed Alara's bleeding hand and pressed it against his own wound, palm to palm, their blood mingling. The instant they touched, the altar beneath them ignited with light. Not fire, but something older, cleaner. The symbols carved into stone blazed white-hot, and the air filled with a sound like distant singing. Victor began speaking in a language Alara didn't know, his voice resonating with harmonics that shouldn't have been possible from a human throat. The light intensified, spreading from the altar to engulf both of them, burning so bright Alara had to close her eyes. She felt the magic take hold, felt it sink into her blood like roots into soil, binding her to Victor in ways she didn't have words for. It wasn't painful, or rather, the pain was distant, secondary to the sensation connection of two lives becoming irrevocably tangled. When she opened her eyes, Victor was glowing, not metaphorically. His skin was luminous, threaded with silver light that traced patterns across his flesh like living tattoos. And when she looked down at her own hand, she saw the same patterns forming, linking her to him in visible proof of their bond. "No!" Celine's scream was fury and disbelief. "No, you can't." "It's done," Victor said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "She is mine by blood and oath, protected under the eternal throne. Any who harm her answer to me." The light was fading now, sinking back into their skin, but the connection remained. Alara could feel it, a thread of awareness linking her to Victor, letting her sense his presence, his emotions, the razor edge of his control. "This changes nothing," another vampire snarled, one of the Nightborn Court. "The prophecy still stands. Her blood still holds power. Binding her to you just makes you a target, too. I've been a target for 1,000 years. Victor's smile was terrible. "The difference is I never lose." He moved then, faster than thought, and the vampire who'd spoken died before he hit the ground, head separated from body with such precision it took a moment for the corpse to realize it should fall. The other vampires fell back, hissing, but none of them ran. They were still calculating odds, still hungry. "Alara," Victor said softly, not take his eyes off the assembled predators. "Stay behind me. Don't move, don't speak. Don't make yourself a target." "Too late for that," Alara muttered. But she moved to stand behind him, her bleeding hand pressed against her chest. The standoff held for one heartbeat. Two. Then chaos erupted. The vampires attacked as one, abandoning any pretense of restraint. Victor met them like a hurricane, his movements too fast to track, each strike lethal and precise. Blood sprayed across ancient stone. Screams echoed through catacombs, and Alara stood frozen at the center of it all, watching her father. Her father. The word felt strange, but it fit in a way nothing else had. This creature of shadow and violence was her father, fighting an entire room of monsters to protect her. And as much as it terrified her, as much as every instinct screamed that this was wrong, dangerous, impossible. She'd never felt safer in her life. Victor carved through the attackers with ruthless efficiency, but more kept coming. The catacombs were a maze of passages, and vampires poured in from all directions. Eventually, even he would be overwhelmed. "There's too many," Illyria shouted over the sounds of combat. "I know." Victor grabbed a vampire by the throat and threw him into 3 others, sending them crashing into a wall hard enough to crack stone. The binding bought us time, not immunity. We need to. A sound cut through the chaos. Not a scream or a snarl, but something else. Something that made every vampire in the room freeze, their heads turning toward the main entrance in perfect synchronization. Bells. Church bells, ringing across the night, their sound pure and clear and utterly wrong in this place of death and shadow. "No!" Victor breathed, and for the first time since she'd met him, Illyria heard genuine fear in his voice. "Not them. Not now." "Who?" But even as she asked, she saw them. They came through the main entrance like a tide of light. Humans dressed in white and gold, carrying weapons that gleamed with the same pure radiance as the ritual had produced. At their head walked a woman whose presence made Illyria's chest ache with undefined emotion. She was beautiful, with silver hair despite appearing middle-aged, her eyes bright as stars. She wore robes embroidered with symbols Illyria recognized from her pendant, and she moved with absolute confidence through a room full of vampires. "Victor Thorn," the woman said, her voice carrying easily over stunned silence. "It's been 17 years. Did you really think we wouldn't find her?" Victor's hands were clenched so tight Illyria could hear bones creaking. "Lyanna, you have no business here." "I have every business." The woman's eyes found Illyria, and something like sorrow crossed her features. "That child belongs with us, with her mother's people. Elena's people abandoned her. We saved her." Lyanna's composure cracked, fury bleeding through. "We pulled her from Malachi's flames, healed her wounds, and placed her with someone we trusted to keep her hidden until the time was right. You were never supposed to find her." The pieces clicked together in Illyria's mind with sickening clarity. "Martha," she whispered. "Martha was one of you." Lyanna's expression softened. "Martha was a guardian, one of our finest. She gave her life tonight protecting you from discovery, as she always knew she might." She held out her hand. "Come, child. Come home to the Order of Dawn. We can protect you in ways even the Vampire King cannot." Illyria stood frozen between them. Victor on one side, his eyes burning with possession and desperate need. Lyanna on the other, offering salvation and answers. The other vampires watched in predatory silence, waiting to see which way she'd fall. "I don't." Illyria's voice cracked. "I don't understand any of this." "You don't have to understand," Victor said quietly. "You just have to choose. Them or me, light or shadow. But choose quickly because—" The ceiling exploded. Stone and timber rained down as something massive tore through the monastery above. The sound was deafening, and Illyria threw her arms over her head, feeling Victor pull her close, shielding her with his body. When the dust cleared, she looked up into a nightmare. The creature that had emerged from the ruins was enormous, easily 12 feet tall, its body a grotesque mockery of human form, all twisted muscle and exposed bone, with eyes that burned like coals and a mouth full of teeth designed for one thing: rending flesh. "Ancient One," Lyanna breathed, her face gone white. "A true blood. That's impossible." "Nothing's impossible tonight," Victor snarled. He pushed Illyria toward Lyanna without looking. "Take her. Get her out. Now." "But—" "Now!" The Ancient One roared, and the sound shattered what was left of the ceiling. It moved with horrifying speed, covering the distance to Victor in a heartbeat, claws extended to tear him apart. Victor met it head-on, and the collision shook the entire catacomb. Lyanna grabbed Illyria's arm, her grip unbreakable. "We have to go. I can't leave him. He's buying us time. Don't waste it." Lyanna pulled, and Illyria's feet moved without conscious thought, carrying her away from Victor, away from the battle, toward the entrance where the Order of Dawn waited with weapons drawn. But just before they reached safety, Illyria looked back. Victor was holding his own against the Ancient One, but barely. His blood, was streaming down his chest where claws had found purchase. And in his eyes, as they met hers across the chaos, she saw something that broke her heart. Relief. He was glad she was getting away. Glad she would survive, even if it meant he wouldn't. And in that moment, Elara made a choice. She wrenched free of Lionel's grip and ran back into hell. The world slowed to heartbeats and breath. Elara's feet hit stone in rhythm with her pulse. Fast, too fast, but not fast enough. Victor was 20 yards away, locked in combat with something that shouldn't exist, his movements a blur of desperate precision. The Ancient One was faster than it had any right to be, its massive form moving with fluid grace. Each strike designed to kill. Elara, no! Lionel's scream barely registered. Victor saw her coming. His eyes went wide with horror, with fury, and he tried to disengage, tried to put himself between her and the creature. The Ancient One's claw caught him across the chest. Deep, so deep Elara heard ribs crack from 15 feet away. Victor went down, and the creature turned toward her. This close, it was worse than any nightmare. Its face was barely recognizable as human. Skin stretched too tight over bone, jaw unhinged to accommodate rows of teeth that glistened with venom. Its eyes were intelligence and hunger mixed into something that made her soul scream in recognition of a predator beyond comprehension. It took one step toward her. Another. Elara was frozen, her body betraying her. Every instinct shut down in the face of certain death. The pendant at her throat began to burn, not metaphorically, actually burn, searing her skin with heat that should have made her scream. Instead, she felt something else. Power, flooding through her veins like liquid fire, responding to the terror, to the proximity of death, to the bond she just formed with Victor. The pendant blazed white-hot, and light exploded from it in a wave. The Ancient One shrieked, stumbling back, its flesh smoking where the light touched. Every vampire in the catacomb recoiled, shielding their eyes, and even Lionel's order fell back from the intensity of it. Elara stood at the center of a circle of light, her body trembling with power she didn't understand, the pendant burning like a captured star against her chest. Impossible! Victor breathed from where he lay. Blood, so much blood, was pooling beneath him, black and viscous in the white light. The pendant shouldn't. Elena said it was only protection, not. Protection takes many forms, Lionel said, her voice carrying a note of awe. She was approaching slowly, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. The pendant was made from a fragment of the first dawn, the moment when the sun first rose and split the world into light and shadow. It was meant to shield her from vampire influence, but bound to Victor's blood, fed by her fear. She reached the edge of the light circle and stopped. She's become something unprecedented. Again, the Ancient One was circling now, wary but not retreating, its eyes fixed on Elara with renewed hunger, as if the display of power had only made her more desirable. Elara! Victor was trying to stand, his movements agonized. The light won't hold forever. When it fades, he'll kill us all to get to you. Then I won't let it fade. Elara's voice came out stronger than she felt. She could feel the power coursing through her, could sense the pendant's magic responding to her will. It hurt. God, it hurt like breathing fire, but it was hers to command. Tell me how to stop it. You can't. Victor had made it to his feet, one hand pressed against the gaping wound in his chest. True bloods are ancient, from the first generation of vampires. They're nearly immortal, driven only by hunger and rage. Even I can't kill one alone. So we don't fight alone. Elara looked at Lionel. You said you could protect me. Prove it. Lionel's expression hardened with determination. She turned to her order. Formation Delta. Containment and banishment. We're not trying to kill it. We're sending it back to wherever it crawled out from. The order moved as one, flowing into positions around the Ancient One with practiced efficiency. Their weapons began to glow with that same pure light, and they started chanting in unison, words that resonated with power. Victor, Elara said, not taking her eyes off the creature. Can you fight? I can barely stand. That's not what I asked. A pause. Then, quietly, yes, I can fight, then fight with them. Just this once, monster and hunter working together. Something flickered across Victor's face. Surprise, perhaps even respect. You're either brilliant or insane. Probably both. Now move. Victor moved. He launched himself at the Ancient One from the side. His speed diminished by injury, but still formidable. His claws, when had he grown claws, raked across the creature's flank, drawing Black Eye Core. The Ancient One roared and turned on him, but the Order was already closing in from the other side, their weapons striking in coordinated patterns. Illyra stood in her circle of light, watching the battle unfold. The power flowing through her was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. She could feel Victor through their bond, his pain, his determination, the edges of his consciousness bleeding into hers. Could feel him drawing strength from her proximity, the light that should have burned him somehow bolstering his failing body. The bond was working both ways. Focus the light. Lioness shouted, drive it toward the southern passage. The Order adjusted their formation, herding the Ancient One like shepherds with rabid wolf. Victor matched their movements with lethal precision, his attacks perfectly timed to complement theirs. Illyra saw the moment they became truly coordinated, hunter and hunted moving as one entity, setting aside centuries of enmity for a common goal. It was beautiful, and it was working. The Ancient One was being driven back, step by step, toward a passage that seemed to breathe darkness. Lioness stood at its entrance, her hands raised, chanting in that resonant language. The air around her shimmered, and Illyra realized she was opening something, a doorway, a gateway, pulling apart reality itself to create a prison. Now! Lioness screamed. The Order struck as one, their weapons blazing with combined light, driving the Ancient One backward into the portal. Victor was right behind it, his claws buried in the creature's back, using momentum to force it through. For a moment, monster and vampire were silhouetted against darkness. Then Victor tried to pull back. The Ancient One's claws found his arm, held, and before anyone could react, it pulled him through the portal. No! Illyra's scream was raw. She ran forward without thinking, the circle of light moving with her, but Lioness was already closing the gateway. The darkness was collapsing, sealing itself. Illyra hit the closing portal at full speed. The world turned inside out. She felt herself torn apart and reassembled in the space between heartbeats, reality compressing into a single point of agony before exploding outward again. When she could see, when she could breathe, she was somewhere else. Darkness. Complete, absolute darkness that had weight and texture. She was standing on something solid, but the ground beneath her feet felt wrong. Too smooth, too cold, pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Illyra? Victor's voice cut through the dark, rough with pain. How? You shouldn't be here. You can't be here. Where is here? She could still feel the pendant's light, dim now but present, casting a faint glow that revealed nothing but more darkness. The between. Victor materialized from shadow, his form flickering like a candle flame. Blood was still streaming from his wounds, but here it looked silver, luminous. The space separating the living world from elsewhere, a prison for things too dangerous to kill and too powerful to contain. Like Ancient Ones, like anything the old gods wanted forgotten. He was looking past her, his eyes tracking movement she couldn't see. The portal Lioness open leads here. Temporary banishment until the creature weakens enough to be permanently sealed. But mortals can't survive in the between. The absence of life will drain you in minutes. Even as he spoke, Illyra felt it, a pulling sensation, as if something was trying to draw the warmth from her bones, the breath from her lungs. The pendant's light was fading, its power bleeding away into the hungry darkness. Then we need to leave, Illyra said, fighting down panic. Can you open a portal back? Not without power I don't currently have. Victor gestured to his wounds. I'm barely conscious. Opening a gateway requires focus I can't maintain. A sound echoed to the darkness, dragging, scraping, the unmistakable approach of something massive. The Ancient One hadn't been banished. It had been freed into its natural habitat. Run, Victor said flatly. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice. He grabbed her shoulders, and his grip was weak, trembling. I can slow it down. Give you time to find another way out. The between has fractures, places where the barrier between worlds is thin. If you can find one, you might be able to force your way through. Might. Better than the certainty of death here. The dragging sound was getting closer. In the faint light of her pendant, Elara saw shapes moving in the darkness. Not just the Ancient One, but other things smaller, skittering on too many legs. I have a better idea, Elara said. How much power would you need to open a portal? More than either of us have. Why? Instead of answering, Elara pressed her bleeding palm against Victor's chest, directly over his heart. The bond. You said it binds us. That means you can draw on my strength, right? Victor's eyes widened. Elara, no. If I drain you here, you won't just die. You'll be consumed by the between, your soul scattered across. Then don't drain me. Just take what you need. I trust you to stop before it's too much. That trust is misplaced. I'm a vampire. Restraint isn't exactly. You're my father. Elara said it firmly, believing it for the first time. And fathers protect their daughters, even from themselves. The Ancient One roared, close enough now that Elara could feel the displacement of air, could smell the rot and violence that clung to its form. Victor stared at her for one more moment. Then his expression hardened with resolve. If this kills you, I will burn the world to ash. Deal. He bit into his own wrist, blood welling up black and silver. Then, with infinite gentleness, he pressed a wound to Elara's bleeding palm, their blood mingling for the second time that night. The bond flared to life. Elara felt Victor's consciousness crash into hers like a wave, felt the enormity of his age and power, the weight of 1,000 years of memory and violence and loss. But she also felt his fear, his desperate hope, the love he'd been carrying for a daughter he thought dead. She pushed her strength toward him, felt him drawing on her life force, her mortality, the blazing brightness of her human soul. It hurt, worse than the pendant, worse than anything, but she held on, held steady, refusing to pull back. Enough? Victor gasped, trying to break contact. That's enough. I have enough. It's not enough. Elara could feel it through the bond. He was stronger, yes, but not strong enough. Opening a portal from inside, the between would take everything he had and more. Take it. Take what you need. You'll die? So will you. Elara grabbed his arm with her free hand, holding him in place. You said, I'm your daughter. Prove it. Choose me over your restraint. Choose us both surviving over your guilt if I don't. The Ancient One lunged from the darkness. Victor made his choice. He pulled hard on their bond, drawing power with desperate need, and Elara felt her strength hemorrhaging out in a rush. Her vision went dark at the edges, her knees buckled, but Victor caught her, held her upright, and began to chant. Light erupted around them. Not white this time, but violet, the color of Victor's eyes. Reality tore open like fabric, revealing a slash of color and noise and blessed, beautiful life beyond. Go! Victor shoved Elara toward the portal. She stumbled through, fell, hit solid ground that felt like stone and moss and everything real. Sound crashed over her, shouting, the clash of weapons, Lioness screaming orders. She rolled over just in time to see Victor still on the other side, facing down the Ancient One. The creature was right there, claws extended, mouth open wide enough to swallow him whole. And Victor wasn't moving to follow her through. No, Elara breathed. No, you promised. I promise to protect you, Victor said, his voice carrying clearly despite the chaos. I never promised to survive doing it. The portal was closing. Elara could see it happening. See reality sealing itself. See Victor preparing to die to give her time to escape. The pendant burned one final time. Elara didn't think. She thrust her hand toward the closing portal and screamed a single word. Stop. The closing portal froze. Every vampire in the catacomb went still. Lionel's eyes went wide with shock, and Victor stared at Elara as if seeing her for the first time. The between responds authority. Lionel whispered, but only to those with true power over darkness and light both. She shouldn't be able to. She's my daughter, Victor said, and there was pride in his voice now, fierce and undeniable. Did you really think she'd be anything less than extraordinary? The Ancient One lunged. Victor spun, his movements fluid despite his injuries, and drove his clawed hand directly into the creature's chest. Black ichor exploded outward, and the Ancient One's roar turned into a shriek of agony. Victor twisted his hand, found something vital, and pulled. The creature's heart came out still beating, pulsing with dark light in Victor's grip. A true blood heart doesn't kill them, Victor said conversationally, as the Ancient One collapsed, writhing. But it does make them very sleepy. He crushed the heart in his fist, and the creature went still, its form slowly dissolving into shadow. Sleep well, old monster. Maybe in a few centuries, you'll wake up less murderous. Then he walked through the frozen portal like stepping through a doorway. The moment he was clear, Illyra released whatever power she'd been holding, and the portal slammed shut with a sound like thunder. She collapsed immediately, her body giving out completely, but Victor caught her before she hit the ground. "I've got you," he murmured, lowering them both to the floor. "You impossible, reckless, magnificent child. I've got you." Illyra managed a weak laugh. "Did you just compliment me?" "Don't get used to it." Around them, the catacomb had fallen silent. The vampires who remained, and there were fewer now, the battle having taken its toll, were staring at Illyra with expressions ranging from awe to terror. The Order of Dawn looked equally stunned. Lyanna approached slowly, her eyes fixed on Illyra with new understanding. The Between froze at her command. "That's not vampire power or human magic. That's something else entirely." "She's damper," Victor said, his voice carrying a warning edge. 1/4 vampire, 3/4 human, bound by blood oath to the eternal throne. She's unprecedented. Yes, but she's mine. She's her mother's daughter, Lyanna countered. Elena entrusted her to us, to be raised among the Order. Elena is dead. Victor's words were quiet but absolute. And Illyra is 17 years old enough to make her own choices. So perhaps, instead of fighting over her like she's a prize, we should ask what she wants. Both of them turned to look at Illyra. She was still lying in Victor's arms, exhausted beyond measure, her body screaming in protest at everything she'd done. But her mind was clear, and when she spoke, her voice carried across the silent catacomb. "I want answers," she said, "about my mother, about the prophecy, about what I am and why everyone wants me dead or imprisoned. And I want them from both of you, not just whoever wins this argument." Lyanna and Victor exchanged a long look, weighing options neither seemed happy with. "Truce," Lyanna said finally, "for tonight, at least, until she's strong enough to hear the truth and decide her own path." "Truce," Victor agreed reluctantly. He looked down at Illyra. "Can you walk?" "I can barely breathe." "That's what I thought." He lifted her easily, cradling her like a child despite his own injuries. "We're leaving. All of us. This place is compromised, and more will come once word spreads of what happened here." "Where do we go?" one of the Order asked. Victor's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Shadowmere, my fortress. Under my protection. She'll be safe from everyone except me." He looked at Lyanna. "Your people can come too. I'm offering sanctuary, not surrender. You allow the Order of Dawn into your stronghold? I'd allow a pack of rabid wolves, if it meant keeping her safe. You're slightly preferable." Victor started walking toward the main entrance, moving with steady purpose despite the blood still seeping from his wounds. "Besides, it'll give us time to plan. Because this isn't over. Not remotely." Illyra rested her head against his shoulder, her eyes already closing. "What isn't over?" "The prophecy," Lyanna said quietly, following behind them. "The one that's haunted your entire life. We only know pieces of it. Fragments recovered from old texts. But the part we do know..." She paused. "It says the child of dawn and dusk will either save the world or destroy it. And that choice will come at the place where she was born." "Where I was born," Illyra echoed. "Where's that?" Victor's arms tightened around her. "The Western Palace, where your mother died, where the war began 17 years ago." His voice went soft, almost reverent. "Where I lost everything that mattered. And where you might lose it all again," Lyanna added, "or save it. The prophecy is unclear. But what is clear is that every vampire, every hunter, every creature of darkness will be converging on that location. Soon." "How soon?" Illyria asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "The blood moon rises in 3 days," Victor said. "On your 17th birthday. When you come of age, the prophecy activates. Ready or not. 3 days." Illyria closed her eyes and let exhaustion claim her. Her last conscious thought a question she didn't dare speak aloud. What if I'm not the hero this prophecy needs me to be? What if I'm the monster it warns against? Shadowmere rose from the landscape like a scar, a fortress of black stone that breathed with some vast, underground heartbeat. When Illyria woke after 36 hours of unconsciousness, Victor's first words were, "We have less than 2 days." In the war room, Victor pointed to the map's black zone, the Western Palace, where the war left a barrier between worlds permanently damaged. "Your mother was half vampire," Victor began. "A diplomat who believed humans and vampires could coexist. We married in secret. When she became pregnant." He paused. "Malachi, my lieutenant, betrayed us. He orchestrated the raid. Elena died protecting you, and I burned his compound to ash. Or so I thought. He survived?" Illyria's blood went cold. "He's at the palace now," Victor said. "We leave tonight." Victor opened a portal, and they stepped into the Shadowlands, a realm of permanent twilight where the Western Palace rose like a broken monument. As they approached, dozens of vampires and hunters attacked, but Victor's warriors and Lyanna's order fought them back. Inside, the palace was a graveyard. They descended 3 levels to the throne room, where massive iron doors sealed with Elena's magic awaited. When Illyria touched them, the seals recognized her blood and shattered. Beyond lay darkness, and 2 thrones of black marble veined with silver. As the blood moon rose, symbols on the floor blazed alife. Power flooded through Illyria, and visions of her mother's death played before her eyes. Then shadows moved. Malachi stepped forward, barely solid, a ghost anchored to this place. "You have to choose, Illyria, salvation or destruction. Either way, I win. I'm tied to the prophecy's power." "Then I choose neither," Illyria said. Elena's ghost materialized. "There's a third choice, daughter. Sacrifice your power. Become fully human. The prophecy fails, Malachi dies, and the barrier heals naturally. But you'll forget everything," Victor said, his voice breaking. "You'll never know me." Illyria felt the pressure building, tearing her apart. "You taught me monsters are defined by their choices. I'm choosing to be nobody special." "You're my daughter," Victor whispered through tears. "You're the bravest person I've ever known." "Dad," she said, and he pulled her close. "Thank you. For 3 days, it was more than I expected." "I'll watch over you," he promised. "Always." Illyria released her power in a soundless explosion. Her vampire nature burned away, the bond severed, the light dimmed. Malachi screamed and dissolved. The barrier sealed. She collapsed, becoming ordinary. Sarah. She called herself Sarah now. Worked in a coffee shop with no memory of who she'd been. Just dreams of violet eyes and a woman's love. When the dark-haired man entered, something sparked in her chest. "What can I get you?" "Coffee. Black," he said, his hand shaking. "I'm Sarah." "Victor," he replied, the name resonating through her like a bell. He stayed 3 hours, watching. As she left, he called out, "Be careful walking home." She walked through sunset streets, unaware of the shadow following behind. Victor, keeping his promise to watch over the daughter who would never remember why. Vampires kept their promises, even when it broke their hearts.